Today on the Fit Rich Life podcast, we have the spicy investor who achieved $1 million net worth by age 30 as an erotic dancer. She's no longer dancing, but she is on a mission to financially educate those in the sex worker industry to also become financially free. I'm so excited to dive into her journey because of what she's doing. And friendly note, she is an anonymous content creator, so we will not be showing her face or sharing her name. During the interview, I'm going to refer to her as Spicy. And before we jump into your story, Miss Spicy, can you educate people like me who are unfamiliar with the sex worker industry?
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me on here today. And yes, I would love to. So, a little bit about the sex worker industry before we dive into the podcast. I want everyone to know that the term sex worker is not a bad word, it's more of an umbrella term. There are so many divisions in the sex worker industry. Like myself, I am an exotic dancer, erotic dancer, stripper, however you want to call it. But we also have sugar babies, we have cam girls, we have um we have porn stars. We have so many individuals that go under this umbrella term sex worker, just to give you guys a little background.
I love that. I'm curious. I just have to ask, like, what is a sugar baby?
So the sugar baby, sugar daddy dynamic is essentially, usually a man that's looking for a girl to be either, if you want to think of it as like arm candy, someone to go out to dinners with, just someone to talk to vent to, and they do get compensated for their time, whether it be a monthly allowance, having certain bills covered for. It's like a transactional relationship between a sex worker or sugar baby and just an individual, usually an older man.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the audience may or may not know. I used to work in the Hollywood nightclub industry for about 8
Hmm.
years, and I totally had VIP table clients come in with, arm candy that they had paid for. So
You
that would
can
have
tell.
been, yeah, that would have been a
Exactly.
sugar baby. I just didn't know the term. So, but I was totally
Yes.
familiar with, like, yeah, I mean, these are oftentimes very wealthy men who, they want to go on a night on the town, and heck, why not have some arm candy?
Exactly.
I love it. Cool. Well, thank you so much for educating us. You and I talked for quite a bit before we hit record, and I totally told you if I say anything that's like doesn't make sense or is rude or like not PC for like your industry, I want you to correct me on the spot, because I'm all about educating people to break down barriers, break down stigma, break down judgment, and like I just love what you're doing. So don't be afraid to like
Thank
correct
you.
me on the spot if I say something stupid. So let's dive into your origin story. Tell me, before we get to you starting as a dancer, what was money like for you growing up?
So, growing up, I had the privilege of being kind of like an upper middle class family, beautiful neighborhood. My dad is very like financially literate as well as my mom. So we grew up kind of learning the value of money, the value of the dollar. We started off getting an allowance from my dad. We had $1 every Sunday. Back in the day, as long as we did our chores, we were able to negotiate that to $5 a Sunday, and that's the cap that we were given. But we always kind of understood working for that weekly allowance, saving it up, and maybe buying something we wanted, or putting it under our pillow or putting it in a savings account that my dad did eventually open up for us. So I grew up with a pretty good viewpoint on money as well as appreciation around it.
I love that. Now, were there any specific stories or lessons mom or dad shared with you that kind of like really traveled into, teenager and adulthood with you?
hmm My dad has, and still is, has always been such a saver. He's definitely more conservative. So he was always a saver of like saving up our Christmas fund, like in an empty wine bottle, hiding it in the closet. So I grew up always seeing my dad year round focusing on like budgeting, truly, like budgeting to put money towards a nice Christmas dinner or towards like birthday gifts. So just seeing that, it really ingrained itself into me like, wow, like, before I understood what investing was, like saving, like, he's saving all this money for a specific purpose. And he still does it. And we still all get together to smash the wine bottle and, have the money for our Christmas gifts or like a Christmas dinner. And my parents are into their 70s now. So I grew up seeing how important it was to them to put money aside for specific expenses. And that really translated into my adulthood with the saving before I got into investing.
I love that. Yeah, it's amazing. Um, I think people underestimate how much our parents influence our habits
They
and our
do.
behavior. And sometimes you get lucky and you have
Yes.
parents who are really good with money. And
hmm
sometimes you get unlucky who and have
Yeah,
parents who aren't so good with money. But what I love about money is, whether your parents were good with it or not, you can choose to be good with it if you put in the time and energy to learn how to be good with it.
absolutely.
So, how did you get into dancing?
Oh man, there's so much that goes in this story, and I'm so excited to unravel it all. So I think I was, uh, I think I was a freshman in college. I was 20. I believe I was around like 20, 21. I didn't have any friends in the industry. This was just a thought that for some reason was born and it always piqued my interest. I'm like, oh, like, like maybe getting like dressed up, like feeling like sexy, feeling hot and getting paid for it. Like that sounds pretty fun, but I never jumped on it until like a few years later into college. I believe I was like probably like 23 and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm moved out. And for reference, my parents never knew I was a dancer. Some people are blessed to have very open and supportive parents. I have very conservative Latino parents, so they never found out, surprisingly enough. But I was moved out, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I searched up which is like the biggest, best club in Miami. That's where I was dancing, and I found one. And let me just do it. Let me audition. And that's how that idea just started. I was like, I finally just wanted to go for it. I was terrified, but I'm like, you know what? If I can do this, I can do anything. And I will say to date, that is still the scariest thing I've ever done is having an audition at a strip club without ever having stepped foot in one before with like friends or with a party. So that's how that started.
I'm curious. Did you do any like pole dancing training exercise classes before you went to this audition?
No, no. And that's a common misconception. Girls say, like, should I like have pole dancing experience, know how to do tricks? Now that I know, you don't need that, but I also didn't have any of that experience. And I wondered, do I need that? You really just, you have to make a first, like a very good first impression with whoever the hiring manager is, get all dressed up. And as long as they like what they see on stage and you can not trip over your feet in these wild 7-inch, 8-inch heels, like you usually have a good chance, but you don't need any formal training like with pole dancing.
I love that. A couple more questions because
Mm-hmm.
I'm so curious.
Yes.
So like, would you consider yourself like prior to getting into erotic dancing like a good dancer?
I am Colombian.
Okay.
So I did grow up like dancing, like feeling very confident of myself. And I felt like, okay, like I can move my hips, I can make this happen. So I felt like a pretty confident, you know, non-exotic dancer. So I had that going in also. Like, oh, I can dance. I know how to do this.
Yeah. And like during college, did you go out clubbing a lot and like just used to like, dancing a lot, like being out in that scene, dancing around other people or
You know what? I barely went out in college. I was like just such a bookworm, teacher's pet. I was just so focused on school. Like I never had anyone inviting me out. So my when I dipped into the actual like sex worker industry, that's when I also got into like nightlife, like going out with friends. And I think it's because my confidence really, really got built up and feeling like secure like in myself and my body, what I want to wear, and dancing while there's people watching me. So it wasn't until I became a dancer that I even wanted to go to a regular nightclub.
that's wild. You said you went to
Yeah.
college in Miami?
Boca Raton, FAU.
Okay,
Go
but you
Owls.
started dancing in
In
Miami.
Miami, correct.
Okay, because Miami has a vibrant nightclub scene. Even
Oh
I
yeah.
partied there.
I didn't know anything about it till I was a dancer. I was like, okay, I can dance in the club. I can dance outside the club too.
So you started dancing while you're still in college? Did I get that
Correct.
right?
Yes.
Okay. And then I'm guessing either you stopped college or graduated and continued to
hmm
dance.
So COVID happened.
Hmm.
And when COVID happened, I was still finishing up my bachelor's. COVID happened. Our club shut down. So that was kind of my break in between like my dancer career. I took some time off and I went ahead to finishing school and I got my master's in the meantime when I wasn't dancing because the club was shut down.
Gotcha. Okay. So can you share what you were studying at school?
Yeah, I did health administration, so business.
Okay. Love that.
Yes.
And um I'm just curious,
Mhm. Ask
like,
away.
is there any like wild stories that
Oh
like,
my God.
happen in the first like year or two where you're just like, whoa, I'm in a crazy industry?
So many. I also want to say that I'm blessed enough to only have amazing stories and experiences in the industry. And I have so many awesome stories. I've met so many people, but I think it's like a few years into the industry, I never knew where I was going to end up. Like I ended up at a private poker game at someone's penthouse, and I'm like, "Oh no, who knows what's going to happen?" And there's like a private chef, there's like massage girls, and I was just there to kind of be someone's good luck charm during like this wild poker match, ending up like in the craziest situations, and it really showed me how like through my eyes like how fun and exciting and colorful this industry is for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's wild like as I talked with you about, before we hit record, I used to be in the nightclub industry,
hmm
in Hollywood of all places, and like so many crazy things happen. Like
Yeah.
I still look back and I'm grateful I'm no longer in that industry because, the audience knows like why I was in there. I did a lot of drugs, I drank a lot, and it just wasn't a sustainable career for me. So I'm
Yeah.
grateful I got out, but I'm so grateful I did it because it was such an epic adventure. Like it was such an epic, like several chapters of my life that I
Yes.
still think back on and be like, wow, some crazy
It's
stuff happened.
crazy. Yeah, so many crazy things happened. I mean, sex work really was my whole 20s.
Ah,
From like when I started dancing, I guess like early 20s all the way till not too long ago when I decided to leave the club. Sex work has been the entirety of like that chapter in my book of my 20s. And so much has happened, meeting all these like crazy fun people, like making friendships with other women in the industry, meeting business owners. I would be like picking their brains and talking about like the stock market with them. And it was a good selling point for me. It made me some money.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we're definitely going to get into your investing career, but before we
Beautiful.
go there, there's some things I want to chat about, just related to the financial side of dancing, if you're open to
hmm
talking about it. So,
Absolutely.
like, one, like, kind of walk us through like a typical week. How many nights a week did you work?
Hmm.
Like, how much money per night did you bring home? Like, help us understand kind of like the actual kind of time commitment as well as the financial aspect of it.
Yeah, so it definitely fluctuates. We have slow nights, we have great nights. When I started out, I was dancing about 4 nights a week.
Hmm.
So just about full time. I never went too crazy into getting like 5, 6, 7 nights a week. I was always very mindful of keeping a good like work-life balance. And just in that industry, in my experience, working more than 4 nights wasn't sustainable. So I'd work on average 4 nights a week, maybe five, and I was averaging minimum $800 a night. But some nights, sky was the limit. You go home with two, three, $4,000 or more. So it really fluctuated. But I would say the minimum was like 800 to 1,000 a night.
And how many hours were you working? Like, let's say, like you get to the club, you get ready, like kind of what is the like I'm there, the prep time, and then how long are you actually there? Like, walk us through kind of that. Like, do you
Yeah.
do sets of dancing and then take a rest, and like do like walk help us understand how the actual night job, aka
Yeah.
like day job, like looks in reality.
Yeah. Every club is different. For my club, there were shifts. So there's day shift, mid shift, and night shift. I worked mid shift, which was like 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. So that was my time block. Like, you get there, you get ready. The great thing about my club is like you're really free. Like, okay, get dressed, go out and make money. So we would have stage rotations where we do dance on stage. We have to take turns. But between that, we rest when we want. You take your lunch or your dinner break when you want in the locker room. So it was pretty much like feeling like a self-employed. As soon as you're clocked in and you're dressed, just make sure you get on stage when you're called and go do lap dances, go talk to customers and make money.
I love it. Cool. So 7 hour shift, it sounds like,
More or
you
less.
know,
Yeah.
yeah. And then, I assume the 7 to 2 a.m. was one of the more lucrative than a day shift,
It can be.
and it can be. And
Yeah.
then now, is there any reason you stayed away from the late night shift, like the 2 a.m. to, crazy early in the morning, or you just wanted to sleep more?
I mean, definitely prioritizing the sleep, but thankfully I kept the mindset. I'm like, okay, work-life balance, because there is still so much of my life and who I am outside of the club. So, I can't get to the gym if I'm working till 4 a.m. I can't spend time with family. So just really prioritizing that and taking it as a job and saying my shift is over at 2 and being grateful for what I made and resting up and just trying it again tomorrow.
Yeah. So I'm curious, like, what did you tell your parents you were doing?
That I was a bartender.
Ah,
Yeah,
yeah,
classic. Yeah,
yeah,
and luckily they don't pry too much. They respect my privacy and my life, and I would just say, yeah, I'm a bartender, and where I grew up is an hour away from Miami, so I was never worried about like running into anyone or like
yeah,
being in the neighborhood. I was deep in Miami, so
yeah.
I was a bartender.
Gotcha. And did you ever run into anyone while working that you're like, oh
Oh my
man,
God, I did.
can you
I
share
did.
the situation?
Absolutely. Yes, I would love to. So for a short amount of time, I was working two jobs. I had a day job. I worked front desk at a Marriott hotel in downtown Miami. And it wasn't sustainable for that long because it was just the double jobs. I was never sleeping and it wasn't healthy. But, I was dancing at night and the director of finance ran into me and he actually happened to have had a crush on me also. And he like, oh my God, I was like we physically ran into each other. We like slammed against each other and I look at him and he looks at me and I remember because I didn't know what to say. I'm like, ta-da, this is my second job. because I didn't know. And I was mortified, but he was so kind. He's like, "Oh God, don't worry. Like, you do you. Like, I support the hustle." And I actually hid in the locker room till I could see he was gone because I wasn't gonna go on stage.
Yeah.
I was
That's
mortified, but kudos on him for being very kind about it.
Yeah. I love it. Thank you for sharing this story.
Yeah,
I think that's yeah, I mean, and again, like I kind of said, one of the things I wanted to dispel is like any kind of like negative thoughts or shame, like people think,
yeah,
oh, like you shouldn't work in that industry. And uh I love that you're just like so open and like, hey, for me it was a really positive experience. Nothing like too crazy happened.
hmm
Um and yeah, I so thank you for sharing. So let's dive into how long were you dancing before you're like, I should maybe do something with this like 800 to $1,000 I'm making a night.
yeah. I think it's when I went back after COVID when our club reopened. I'm sure we're gonna get into it, but I definitely had, like a breaking point, like an eye-opening moment where I'm like, I should be doing better with my money. So I would say like 4 years ago. So, you know, back in 2021 is, when I had gotten back into the club, and that's when I decided to start being smart with my money and learn what is investing.
And were there any like was there a pivotal moment where you were just like, why don't I have more money? Or like, were you like, what am I doing with this money? Like, I want to eventually get out of this career. Like, what was kind of the catalyzing, moment or series of thoughts that culminated in you actually getting serious about building some wealth?
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are aware, but during COVID, we all thought we were experts in the market day trading. So I unfortunately went down the rabbit hole of day trading options and thinking I knew everything in that casino, because that's how I view it. Truly, it's gambling. I made a lot of money because then again, we were all experts back then with how the markets were moving. And I lost a significant amount of money that was truly my wake up call. And it truly put me in a depression for about 3 months. And I will say I lost about $90,000. And it was like everything I had. I didn't have any savings. I didn't have anything else. I had gained up to like, I think it was like $95,000 in my trading portfolio. And I lost it in a matter of like a week. So I lost everything. And that was my
Was
moment that,
was that the COVID crash that wiped you out?
yes,
Yeah. And
yeah,
this is like, I'm just going to talk for just a quick second. We'll
go
get back
ahead.
to your story. And you said it, like everyone thinks they're a stock picking genius during a raging bull market. And then a crash comes and
Yeah.
people lose their shirts.
hmm
And like, that's why I'm like, the audience knows like I'm predominantly an index investor.
Yeah.
Um, and, I don't have a problem with people having a portion of their portfolio in single stocks. But if you think you're the genius day trader stock picker that's going to outperform Warren Buffett, like just wait till the
That's
next
that's
COVID
what I
crash.
thought. I was like
Yeah.
on top of the world. I'm making all this money. I mean, in one trade I'd made $10,000. Like no one was better than me. I had it
Yeah.
I had that, that inflated ego, and I lost everything, and I was just embarrassed, and I had no one to talk to about it. I wasn't going to tell my conservative money safe parents,
Yeah.
and I didn't have any friends that I feel would relate. And I feel like if I spoke about it, they would just be like, "Are you kidding me?" Like it would just make me feel worse. So it was a dark time, losing my whole savings and being humbled. the way the market likes to humble day traders for the most part,
Yeah.
or the majority of them at least. And that was my moment where I'm like, you know what? I think I heard the club has opened up again. Let me try this again. And it took me a few months of like some dark times of like, everything I lost to get to that point and try again.
I really appreciate you sharing the truth of the matter that like you
Yes,
literally got wiped out. Like, pretty much you had 90 grand almost
I
at that
know.
100K milestone, and then you got wiped out,
I
and it
know.
sent you into a dark place. I'm guessing some level of depression.
Oh,
um
absolutely.
how long were you in the depression before you're like, all right, let me pick myself up, dust myself off, and like try again?
I truly felt like I was in this depression for at least like 2 months. I didn't want
Okay.
to talk to anyone. I didn't want to see anyone. Luckily, this was aligned with COVID, so it's not like I could go out anyways. I was indoors. So I was able to mask that, but I was hurting. I've had never seen that much money in my life, and it was all gone. And I didn't understand what was happening. And I just, came to realize that I was playing with house money. I'm gambling, and I am
Yeah.
not an investor. That's how I felt.
Yeah.
So, it took me like, 2, 3 months of self-hating myself for what I did. And I realized the club had opened up again. And I was like, you know what? If I made that much money, I can do it again.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. uh, JL Collins, author of The Simple Path to Wealth, he
Mm,
has this phrase that he uses where he says fast money is fragile money. And I think it's
yeah,
so true because like
it's true.
I I made fast money in the nightclub
Yeah.
business, put myself into debt. There's so many crypto bros, day
Oh, yeah.
traders that they make all this money and then they lose it all.
Yeah. I see it all the time. I still see it. And that's why I try to promote like long-term investing is not the same as being like a day trader,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. Still to
Yeah.
this day, I know a lot of millionaires, like at
Hmm.
least 50, if not
Yeah.
more. Not a single one of them is a day trader.
That says a lot.
Yeah, they're all either index investors or
Hmm.
some form of very long-term investor, or they're in real estate, or they've started their own business.
Hmm.
So, yeah, and that's kind of one of my barometers is like, do I know anyone in real life who has done this? Right?
Yeah.
So like still to this day, I don't know anyone who's like successfully retired from any crypto or Bitcoin. I
It's a
see
very
tons of
small percentage.
I see a ton of them online, but I have
Yeah.
zero friends in real life who that's how they made their wealth and their financial freedom. Now,
Yeah.
I have tons of friends. We all have a portion of our portfolio in Bitcoin and some other crypto, but like I don't know anyone who has successfully like quit the 9 to 5 rat race because they like made it with Bitcoin or some crypto. Like, and like the fact that I don't know a single person in real life means that like who am I to think that I'm going to be the person to like hit it huge with that?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So you get wrecked by the COVID crash.
Yeah.
You're in 2 to 3 months of like serious depression, and you're like, okay, the club's open again. I'm gonna like go at this again. So, what did you do different this time?
I think just having my eyes opened up to how delicate money truly is when we're not doing the right things is what made me go into the club with a different mindset, saying, like, okay, I did all my research and I'm like, I think I'm going to be a long term investor. And I already knew what that was. I knew what index funds were and everything, even during the day trading era. And I'm like, you know what? I'm deleting this portfolio. I'm going to be a long term investor. I want to be a real investor, and everything I make is going to go into one solid index fund, because that at that point I just wanted to build a stable foundation where I don't have to worry going to bed at night that I'm going to wake up and all the money's gone. So just having that mindset of like everything I make is going to build back what I lost and maybe more, hopefully, maybe more. That's what I was thinking back then. So I went in with extreme tunnel vision. Like it was a mission, truly. It was like kind of, you think like revenge trading. I was like getting revenge on my past self for our mistakes and learning to forgive myself, which I feel like even still I'm trying to forgive myself because I'm like, if you didn't lose that money, you would have been here by now.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, you have to forgive yourself
Yeah,
because, before we hit record, I could have been a millionaire by like, I don't know, 27, 28 if I had
yeah.
actually saved and invested the money I made in the nightclub business.
Hmm.
Cause I was making anywhere between 150 and 300 grand a year. And this is like back in,
But
you
yeah,
know,
it's a lot.
2007, 2008, which is way
Yeah,
more like that money valued today would be significantly more. And I walked away from that industry 80 grand in debt, like
yeah.
zero net, like negative net worth.
Negative
So
net worth. Yeah.
yeah. So, but I use that as fuel to be like, no, I'm going to become financially free and I'm going to be smarter about actually building wealth and no longer falling prey to looking rich and instead
Oh
becoming
yeah.
rich. So I think it's like I think it's awesome that you failed because you're going to for the rest of your life, you're going to value the wealth that you've built and you're going to build it in a way that's more sustainable. That's like, truly intelligent investing. And the chances of you losing it again are like very slim now because
Yeah.
you learned your lesson, right?
Exactly. And I tell myself all the time, like, if you didn't lose all this money, you may have not had the inclination to go back to the club.
Yeah.
So everything
Or
happens for a reason.
100%. Or you may have not become a millionaire by 30 because
Oh,
you
no, I
didn't
wouldn't have.
have
Absolutely
you
not.
didn't have that driving like,
Yeah.
oh, like I have to like do it different and better this time.
Yeah. I was all in, like, foot on the gas pedal, like, tunnel vision. I had a mission. I didn't care about anything, about just nothing. I just wanted to make money and invest it the next morning. That's
Yeah,
all I cared about.
I love that. So you go back, I'm assuming like 2021 or late 2020 when you
Yeah.
go back.
Yeah, around there.
Okay. And how much were you investing a month? Because you
So
became
I,
basically on pinned to the top of your threads profile at
yes.
the spicy investor. You literally have your like net worth
Yeah.
milestones, like the first 100K, the first 200K, the first 300K. And we spoke over Instagram DMs like just the other week. You finally hit the 1 million. But
Yes, I did.
like I want to understand like how much were you investing like in that first like say year or two once you went back to club, how much were you investing per month?
So I'm a tracker. So I have all of my investment contributions since I started. I always told myself, you need to, once I had an idea of what I was making monthly, like my average, I was able to be like, you need to invest a minimum amount. Like that is the goal. Anything more than that, great. My minimum amount was to invest at least $10,000 a month. Again, I worked at, one of the most popular, biggest clubs in Miami. So I was making amazing money. So, going back, I had months I invested $17,000, $20,000, $14,000. I always invested over my 10 grand minimum.
Mm,
I'm even looking back, July of 2023, I invested 27 grand.
I
And
love that.
a big part of
That's
this is because a big part of this is because my living expenses and my lifestyle are so simple and relaxed. And to me, I live a wonderful lifestyle, but I drive the paid off Honda Fit. I'm careful with my rent or the leases that I've gotten into. So almost, I think I had like a 80% savings rate or investing rate monthly.
that's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
so big props to you for not being ashamed of driving a Honda Fit.
I love
You know,
my Honda.
yeah, I've shared this story many times on my content and on my podcast. I was broke, 80 grand in debt, 6 years beyond on my taxes, and looking rich with a fancy Range Rover. When I discovered
Uh,
financial independence, I sold my Range Rover and got a 2012 Prius,
Good for
became a
you.
millionaire, became a multimillionaire, and guess what? I still drive the 2012 Prius because I
That's a
don't
good
care.
car.
It's an
Yeah.
amazing car.
I feel like the further we get into our financial journey, for the most part, we don't care too much about like the shiny things. And it's not easy, like especially in this day and age of social media. I see all these girls with these like pretty Porsches and like I want that too. Like I also like nice shiny things, but I'm still, even after reaching the seven-figure milestone, I'm still so focused on maximizing my wealth and growing it and not adding any extra expenses into my lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the challenges I faced when I was in the nightclub business is everyone around me was like busy looking rich, like
Mm,
driving the fancy cars, going out to fancy dinners, living in fancy condos or homes. And, you know, I don't know, but I estimate many of those people were totally broke and just looking rich. So, and I totally fell prey to it. I was like, literally, like, oh, like I gotta drive a Range Rover. I need to live in the nice high rise condo. And, you know, I, so I'm curious, like, how did you avoid like the lifestyle creep, the like getting into the fancy cars and spending all the money that you're
yeah.
making?
You see so much of that in everyday life, but you see a lot of it in my industry. You see
Mm-hmm.
so much of it. These girls like, and I love that for them. I'm not demonizing treating yourself and buying something nice because we work for hard for our money. But you see so much of it with like the designer purses and in our club we have a parking garage just for us. And my car was always valeted in the very back. And everyone else's, yeah, and I had to walk. And everyone else's like nice Mercedes and like G Wagons and like Porsches were in the front. And it just showed me, I'm like, you know what? Like, I don't care. Like, I'm on a mission and you guys are really showing me like how well I'm doing. So it was hard. I think it's because, losing that money during COVID just lit something in me that can't be repeated. And that it was a blessing. Truly, it was a blessing. And it gave me this tunnel vision where I'm going to appreciate, how pretty and glittery you guys all look in your lifestyles and the pictures of your Miami penthouses, but I'm building something and I promise it's going to be huge. And one day I'll be able to get my dream car and, whatever else I want to spend money on. But I was just so determined. And it's like I said, I was like, taking revenge on my mistake, and it really like did something to me, and that's why I was able to just focus.
So, were there any books, podcasts, content creators? Like, how did you like start investing? Walk us through the kind of like, oh, I'm day trading, like, and then like now I'm a much smarter investor. Like, what were some of the influences or resources that helped educate you on your investing journey?
So I won't say there's any specific literature or book that I read. In the very beginning, it was just as simple as Google searches. Like, Google is free, it's your best friend. I would type in things like, what's an index fund? Like,
Mm,
what's the best one to own? What's a long-term investor? Like, just like those basic Google searches would get me down the rabbit hole and, you know, make the proper algorithm for me to surround myself with that knowledge. I also unfollowed every day trader page that I was following on Instagram and kind of started fresh because I believe in using social media as a tool and just following people you're inspired or can learn from. So I started following a bunch of amazing content creators that center themselves around long-term investing and that do a really great job at explaining what's going on right now in the market. They have free resources, and I can get those names for you as well. They really helped me.
Yeah, is there, like 2 to 5 that you want to share that like you are a big fan of?
Yeah, one that I've been following from the beginning, his name is For Better or Worth. You
Yep.
probably know him. The
Yep.
other one is Delani, the money coach,
Yep. Yeah,
and
it's at
Better,
it's
sorry?
Daily Ann, the money
Oh, I'm
coach.
sorry,
Yeah.
Daily and the money coach.
Yeah.
And another one is Better Wallet. That's Mark Russell. He's a great finance coach. And I think another one is called The Market Hustle. And
Okay.
they have, yeah, those are a few of many that I started following and even messaging and saying how much they inspire me in the very beginning of my investing journey. And I'm still in contact with them. So it's been very fun to show them my progress and tell them that they were, you know, they were what got me started and what inspired me to invest properly.
I love that. Um, so the a couple things. One, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to do a quick screen share because I want people to see your net worth milestones,
Hmm.
cuz like the fact that you became and I'll verbally walk people through what we're looking at, so if you're
Awesome.
listening on Apple or whatever, like you'll be able to understand what I'm doing. So let's see if I can. I want to make sure I select the right tab. Okay, here. Nope. Chrome tab. Yeah, editor, you're going to have to cut out this pause and make it look like I immediately got to it.
You had it
Um,
ready.
okay, cool. So I have the Spicy Investors page up on Threads.
Yes.
And we have her face blurred out right now, so everyone, you might be able to see her cat in the back
Oh,
right corner. I see her beautiful orange cat chilling in the sun. But her face is blurred out. But here we have her net worth milestones. So she started in looks like in February of 2022. She hit her $100,000 net worth
yeah.
milestone, and it took her 5 months to get there. So it sounds like, when you really got serious about this, you already had a little bit of wealth started investing, but then you got super serious about it. 6 months
Yes.
later, you you doubled it to 200,000 in August of 2022. Then 8 months later, 300,000 in April of 2023. Then 400,000 4 months later in August 2023. Then 5 months later, 500,000 in January of 2024. 4 months later, 600,000 in May of 2024. 700,000 5 months later in 2024. 800,000 in June of 2025. 8 months later. That's largely because if people paid
Yes.
attention to the stock market,
Yeah.
March and April and May were not good months.
They were rough,
Uh,
but we stayed the
they
course.
Yes. So then 900,000 in July 2025, a month later, 1 month
Woohoo!
later,
That altered my
100,000
brain
in 1 month.
chemistry. Yeah.
Yep. And then literally in October of 2025, 3 months later, you hit the $1 million net worth milestone. So during the market meltdown in
Which
April of
one? Oh, okay.
2025, did you sell or did you
No.
keep investing?
When in doubt, zoom out. Thank God I had already been educating myself since then. And I just wanted to focus on making more money because this is the best sale I've ever seen. So
Yeah.
since then, I was educated enough to not sell. But it really, I feel like I've been learning a lot of like the emotions that you need to kind of block when the stock market is doing its thing, like back in April.
I love that. And what advice would you give for somebody who's going through their first market downturn as an investor? Right? Because everyone thinks they're going to be fine. And then they literally watch,
It
it doesn't
hurts.
matter how much money you have invested,
Yeah,
because like
it's all relative.
it's all relative. So whether you have 10,000, 100,000, or a million invested, when you lose 40% of it, it hurts so bad the first time when you're like watching, and it's scary. Like you want to
Yeah,
sell and like stop the
stop the
losses, but like
bleeding.
yes, but what do you counsel people to do? Because we're gonna have another market downturn.
Yeah, it's coming. Who knows though? But
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is being okay and sitting with the emotion of it is scary. It's not to make anyone feel bad and say it's not scary, because we all have to understand what that means and how to get through it, or maybe even how to benefit, if you are going to continue to invest as well. I would say, like, recognize that it is a scary thing to see, but like the known quote, when in doubt, zoom out. Like these market lows are going to end up, being they're going to end up moving back up, and just ignoring your portfolio, putting it away and just continuing on with life. Or if you are in the position to continue investing, that's all you got to do. It really comes down to just ignoring the noise, ignoring the headlines, and maybe focusing on certain Instagram pages like the ones I mentioned that do an amazing job at calming you, especially as a new investor, calming you and showing you, but look at all the other market downturns and corrections we've had, you know, years in the past, decades. It really shows you, like, oh, this is not as different as all these other market corrections. And there's going to be many more in your career as an investor. So the best thing you can do is sit on your hands, invest some more if you want to, if you can, and just go touch grass, is what I say.
I love that. Yeah. In my experience, there's a couple things that I've done in my own journey that really helped. Number
Mm-hmm.
one is have automated investing set up so that like you don't even have to think about
Have to look at
investing
it.
when the market's going down. Just like set it and forget it.
Yeah.
um the other thing is make sure that and this is what I did for myself, so weigh it against your own kind of risk tolerance, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I've always kept enough of a cash reserve that even if the stock market took a major dump,
Yeah.
I can still sleep well at night. And that's my like litmus test or barometer,
Yeah.
is like how much cash, and keep it in a high yield savings account or money market account so you're at least earning some interest on it. But how much do you need that if the stock market went down by 50%, you could still sleep at night? And then keep that in cash. And so for me, that's always been 1 to 2 years of living expenses, which is a lot,
That is a
right?
lot. I agree.
And for someone like mathematically, it makes way more sense for me to put that money into the market and make it work.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, being able to sleep like a
Oh,
baby
yeah.
for 8 hours a night, that's worth millions of dollars to me. So I don't
Absolutely.
care if I'm millions of dollars less wealthy at the end of my life because I kept cash on the side. Because the truth is, me getting 8 hours of sleep is gonna mean that I'm gonna live significantly longer.
Yeah, and that's what I do. I also have a high yield savings account, and my goal was to grow it to one full year of living expenses, which for me is $40,000.
Yep.
So very low living expenses here. So I capped it at $40,000 because I don't want to oversave either. So, I have that $40,000 to the side, and like you said, it helps me sleep better at night. And sometimes I feel like more proud of that 40 grand in that high yield savings account than the brokerage account, because it symbolizes like clarity, my mental health, and just no matter, like you said, no matter what happens, stock market goes down 50%, I can survive for a year. And
Yeah.
just it makes me feel so secure and so proud to have that and have the privilege to have that savings account.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's different for everybody. Now, one of the things I always, tell coaching clients of mine is like,
Hmm.
if your spouse works and you work and you're both in like stable careers that don't have high turnover,
Yeah.
you can risk a lower emergency fund. You could
Hmm.
have 3 to 6 months in like emergency fund, not a full year. But if you're single or you're in a like a high turnover industry
Yeah.
where it's like easy to lose your job, 6 to 12 is going to be a lot better for you. Um, and the other thing I recommend is if you're an entrepreneur, meaning like you are running your own business, keep a year at
A year
least.
is good. A year is that sweet
Yeah,
spot.
yeah. But if you're in
I
a
agree.
stable 9 to 5 and have a spouse, cool. You could probably get away with like 3 months, even, 6 months if you're more risk averse. But yeah, pay attention to kind of your circumstances. But I think the test is like, how much do you need to sleep well at night? And whatever that
Hmm.
amount is, whether it's 4 months or 8 months or 12 months or a year and a half, whatever. And then that's all that matters.
Yeah, and I know you said like depending on your industry, especially for individuals in my industry or sex workers, I feel like, you guys should be even more empowered to have a fully funded emergency savings account. That's what I call it. You know, 1 year at least at minimum, because in our industry, our income can really fluctuate. You can
Mm,
have not only a bad night, you can have a bad week, you can have a bad month. Our industry really does depend on seasons,
yeah.
and you never know. Life does its thing. You can't go into the club, or maybe you need a mental health break, which is big in our industry and in every industry. That savings account is going to save you, and it's going to be the difference between going into the club desperate for money, or going into the club because you just want to make some money and you want to be there. And
Yeah.
that's a difference between, like, something dangerous or something productive and enjoyable or empowering.
Yeah. Desperate times
Call
require
for
desperate
desperate measures.
measures. Yeah,
Well,
100%. And that's why I'm sure people in your industry,
yeah.
they are not good with stewards of their money
Hmm.
and they cross a line that they never wanted to
Yeah,
cross.
it happens, and I see it, and I get it, but there are things you can do to avoid crossing your own personal boundaries, because you got to make rent.
Yeah.
And that's something I hope all women in my industry and in every industry can focus on and can think about.
Yeah. So one thing I also want to point out, because you briefly mentioned it, but for people who don't understand this, it's pretty incredible. So, and this is something I try to teach online all the time. Your savings rate, the percentage of your money that you actually earn and keep and invest,
Hmm.
that's like it literally tells you how long until you're financially free or financially independent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Spicy mentioned that she basically got to like an 80% savings rate, which
Yeah.
is one of the reasons why she went from, you know, little to no net worth to 1 million in 4 years, is because she was keeping so much of what she was making and not only saving it, but also putting it into the market. So
Hmm.
at an 80% savings rate from a net worth of zero, that means you only have 5.5 years of paid work before you are work optional, AKA you can retire early if you
Yes.
want. So I just want to like draw that out. So it doesn't matter if you make $50,000, $100,000, or $250,000. If you save and invest 80% of it, you are only working for 5.5 years before you are work optional. And so this is why, like, one of the myths I try so hard to dispel is like it doesn't necessarily matter how much you earn. It matters how much of what you earn you keep and actually invest.
Absolutely.
So, on that note, you stepped away from dancing
Yes.
back in, I think, 2024, October. Did I get it right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
So, it's been about a year.
It's been a little over a year.
Why'd you step away?
So when I stepped away, and I know I have these numbers written down somewhere, I think I stepped away at about like a 700 or $750,000 net worth. I found that the club was no longer serving its purpose. Going into the club ended up being something that would cause anxiety. I wouldn't want to be there, and I wouldn't make money because I didn't want to be there. I was having more slow nights than I was used to, and I'm like, you know what? I think this is the universe's way of telling me the club served its purpose. You've accomplished your mission, and you made back like 7 times the amount that you lost. And that's the way I chose to look at it. I think the club is kind of like pushing me away, and I just didn't want to be there. It would not make me feel good to be there. So I decided to close that chapter, and it was still hard. I recognized that it didn't serve a purpose, but it didn't mean that leaving the club, which was my normal, my whole life, and the image I created online for myself wasn't going to be difficult. But I think that's why I decided it was best because I didn't want to feel stuck in the industry if I already accomplished my mission.
Yeah. So, I'm curious, when did you first, like, what was the time between when you first realized, like, wait a minute, I don't think I want to be in this anymore, and you actually stopping?
I think it was very quick. I'm very quick with my decisions. I'm impulsive. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think it was like about like a month or two of like sitting with myself and evaluating how I felt after every shift, whether I made money or not. So it was about a month or two where it started like beating down on me, and I was able to kind of reflect and recognize that I think what's going on is that this no longer serves a purpose, and I'm ready to close the chapter.
I just realized something from this conversation and what you just said. So, I knew I wanted to get out of the nightclub industry about a year and a half, 2 years into getting into it.
Hmm.
But it took me another like 6, 7 years to actually get out. And I think the reason was, or one of the big reasons was, I didn't have any savings and investing, savings and money invested. So I think if I had actually
Oh,
saved
yeah.
and invested and had this, $1 million portfolio, I would have left a lot earlier because I would have been like, cool, I got money, I can go figure things out. But because I was in debt, I was like, I can't leave this high income. Like, I need this, like,
Yeah.
and I literally, that just clicked for me because I thought it was because I was addicted to the lifestyle and the easy money. For me, I thought it was easy money. And the prestige and the power and being around
Yeah.
celebrities and rich people spending lots of money on bottle service. But I think that was part of it. But the other big part of it is because I didn't understand how to save and invest, and I was not a good steward of the money that I was earning. I was like financially trapped. Whereas
Yeah.
you said you left around when you had a $700,000 net worth. Like, you were like, yeah, I'm going to think about this for like a month, but like, hey, I got 700K. Like, I can go do something else and figure this out. So
Yeah.
you built the financial foundation, where you could then be
Empowered.
empowered to like make
Yeah.
a transition without having to be like, oh, I can't leave this.
And that's why, establishing yourself financially is so important because the big thing is you're able to remove yourself from toxic situations, whether it be toxic job, toxic relationship, toxic housing situation, or even situations that no longer serve you, because you have a year of living expenses or 6 months to a year living expenses in a savings account. You don't have to touch the investments, ideally. Like I felt so empowered and so accomplished with everything I was able to grow for myself. So that was absolutely a big reason. I was like, you know what? Like, look at all this money. I did this and I know how to keep it this time. Like, I don't like it here. I'm not very happy anymore. I think I'm ready. But it was still hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard.
Well, I love that though. It was literally, cause you had that financial foundation, you're like,
A hundred percent.
you're like, let me just feel this out for a month and a half. And
Yeah.
like, hey, it's no longer serving the purpose. So I don't know if you can share, but over the last, since you left over a year ago, are you continuing to work in some capacity? Are you just investing? Like, what are you doing for income?
So right now, I did have my degree. So I was in
Yeah.
between jobs, like seeing what I want to do, getting into remote sales. So that's been my main income, like aside from my investments growing on their own. My main income has been these remote sales. And I also do one-on-one coaching sessions that have been doing very, very well since leaving the club. I've been growing my following, and that's pretty much my income.
I love it. Um, and by remote sales, are you doing like business to business sales, like selling some company's product or service?
Yeah, so I've been getting into working for content creators that sell courses and
Mm,
that have sales teams. So, catching up on warm leads, making a commission through that. So that's something I've really been diving into because I'm not ready to retire. I still have a lot of like urgency to like be productive and to make money and be part of a community, even if it's remote. So I've been
yeah,
enjoying that.
I love that. That's great. Yeah, it's wild. If you're good at that, remote
Oh,
sales,
yeah.
like you can make a ton of money because like I assume you're getting commissions.
Yes.
And so it's performance based, which means you are in control of how much you make in a given month if you're good at selling.
Yeah, and I learned everything I need to know about sales in the club. I will tell you that. Textbook sales techniques. I've learned
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah. Yeah. I always tell people, so I was in B2B sales
Okay.
for a decade.
Mm.
After the nightclub business, I was in business to business sales and SF Bay Area tech. And when you have a commission based job that is like where you are and you have an uncapped commission, it's
Yeah,
wild how much money you can make. And I think it's a cheat code to like early financial independence or
it
early work
is.
optionality because like you can like make ridiculous amounts of money.
I know. Sales is truly the hack. I'm aware it's not for everyone, but
Yeah.
I've always loved sales. I've been in car sales. I worked for Honda selling
Yeah.
cars as the only woman in the dealership. Like I have always loved sales in every capacity, and
Yeah.
I'm always going to be in sales in any industry it is.
So the truth is we're all in sales in some form or another, whether we're selling our spouse on an idea of where to go for dinner, whether we're trying to get our child to do something, whether we're trying to get our boss to go with our idea, whether we're trying to get a promotion or whatever. So I think learning how to sell is like one of the like best skills in the world to learn. And I do agree with you that there are certain
Hmm.
types of people that are kind of like naturally better at it and
Yeah,
also enjoy it. And it looks or it
I
seems
love
like you
sales.
enjoy it to
I
me.
feel like everyone can learn sales to some extent, but some people are truly born with that like fire under them to like sell. I like, sell me this pen type of people. I love sales. So, being in industries that allow me to sell whatever the product is and have uncapped commission, it's my favorite thing because it sometimes it feels like me against me. Yeah.
Yeah. I I love that. Yeah, and so if you're at all interested in sales and you want to get to financial independence
Oh
faster,
yeah.
get yourself an uncapped sales job, and you'll be amazed at how fast you go. Because I think there's two things that are required to achieve financial independence. One is it has to be one of your top goals. Like it sounds like financial
Still
independence has
is.
been one of your top goals.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if it's not number one or number two priority, you're just
Yeah.
never going to become financially independent. Like, so that's number one. And number two is to be strategic about your savings rate. And there's two ways, to do that. One is like, optimize your expenses. So like reduce your spending. Like Spicy's telling us, like she only
Yeah.
needs $40,000 a year, like in the U,
Yes. I
and
live
she
in South
lives in the
Florida.
US. Yes. Yeah. And so if she can live
Yeah.
$40,000, you know, like, and is like, the background of your home where you're recording looks nice enough to
Facebook
me.
Marketplace.
So like, yeah, cause I see so many people online that are like, oh, you can't live on $40,000 in America. And I'm like, I
Yeah, I
know a lot of
understand
people who
everyone's
do.
situation is different. Some people have kids, or I get that, but at least in my
Yep.
experience, like I went ahead and found the more affordable rent. I don't live in a, pretty new luxury building. I live just like in a general residential area.
Yeah.
I decided to keep the paid off car. I have really minimal expenses, and every now and then I'll treat myself to like a nice dinner, like with my boyfriend or with my parents. But other than that, I'm really just focused on prioritizing building my wealth, even at this point.
Yeah. So talking about wealth, there's a couple things I want to circle back on. Number one is we talked about this off air, but I want you to share how much of your wealth came from dancing income versus
So
investing
to
growth.
date, I have contributed just about $600,000.
So the other $400,000 or so came from
Yes.
investment growth, which is amazing. Uh, Second related question is, could you break down your investment strategy in terms of like what percentage is in index funds, what percentage is in single stocks,
Mhm.
is there real estate in there, kind of just like your overall kind of portfolio allocation and strategy
Yeah.
that
So
you're
as of now,
willing
I
to
do
share
not
with us.
own any real estate. I rent. Um, I like to rebalance every 3 months, but I do like to make sure I have 60% in index funds and the other 40% in stocks. I realize that my biggest luxury is time, and I am still a very young investor. So that's why I like to have that 40% in stocks, and they're blue chip stocks. Like, I like to have a little more exposure in Apple, I'm in Google, I'm in Amazon, stocks like that. And that other 60%, I have it split between VOO or VOO and QQQM. Those are my two favorite index funds right now.
Great. And for the audience, VOO is Vanguard's S&P
Correct.
500
Yes.
index ETF, and QQQ
Yeah.
is the Nasdaq
Yes.
index. Did I get that right? Which
Yeah.
is tech heavy. Um, but yeah, okay, cool. Which are both index funds. Index
Yeah.
funds is just a collection of a bunch of individual stocks. You can Google or Chat GPT what index funds are, or index ETFs if you need to know. But love
Of
that. Thank you
course.
so much for sharing actually what you're doing. That's really helpful. So when did you start the spicy investor content
I started the Spicy
journey?
Investor really when I went back into the club. Pretty much, maybe like a few months later. I think I was around like a $30,000 net worth when I started. And I decided, I'm like, you know what? I think like
Hmm.
I somewhat know what I'm doing now. And I would love to at least even encourage other women in my industry to see what I'm doing with my money, because no one was there to teach me. And if I can at least get one girl to open up and fund a Roth IRA, I did my job and I did what I feel like was my calling. I learned how to protect myself and get myself into a better place mentally and financially. And I wanted to just start spreading the knowledge and awareness that I gained at that moment. So I started it probably around like $30,000-$50,000 net worth. So not too far off from when I went back into the club after COVID.
I love that. You have this post on Instagram where you said every tip was a stepping stone. Now my portfolio is proof that dancers can build generational wealth. So, for those in your industry, what would you recommend, you know, 2 to 3 steps that they could take after listening to this that would get them started on their
I
financial
think the
freedom
first
journey?
thing would be to focus on what your living expenses are looking at or looking like, and what is the difference between your wants and your needs. If you're able to lower your living expenses as much as possible, you're going to have more money left over at the end of the month. And I found that that's the biggest thing that keeps girls from having extra money to invest or save. That would be the first thing I'd recommend. The second thing is you need to want it. I know you previously mentioned that this is not going to work if it's not your number one priority. You need to truly want financial independence for your future self. You may not feel it right now in the present moment. You might not like the idea of not touching that money that's invested for 5, 10 plus years. But if you care and love your future self enough, it's a no brainer. And the third thing is just staying the course, like being disciplined. And if financial independence is your mission, focus on it. Make sure you go into the club. Make sure you like go in your like whatever your minimum days are, and make sure you come up with a minimum amount you want to save or invest on a monthly basis, and make that your most important bill. Those would be my three
I love.
advice or tips.
I think that's so incredible. So I just want to kind of recap it. Number one, focus on optimizing your living expenses so that you have plenty of income left over to save and invest. And I learned this the hard way, but you cannot out earn poor spending habits. So if you drive the G Wagon and live in the fancy condo and you have, a hundred
Yeah.
bucks left over at the end of the month, guess what? You're never gonna be financially free ever. It doesn't matter if you make, a couple $100,000 a year, you will be stuck because you're not building
Yeah.
any actual wealth. No, Number two, you have to actually want financial independence for your future self. And the way I like to think about it is instead of thinking that like you're depriving yourself not driving the G Wagon or whatever it is, you're actually spending lavishly on your freedom. Every month that you put in 10K, or 17K or, however much, whether it's,
Mm-hmm.
2000 or 5,000 or whatever, you're spending lavishly on your freedom. And Spicy is a perfect example because she's like a millionaire
Yeah.
at 30. Like, this is like serious stuff. Like, and she was committed. She wanted FI. She wanted financial independence, FI. That's what I mean by FI. And she stayed the course. Number three, she just like what she said, she decided
Mm-hmm.
10K minimum per month. I'm going to put that in every single month. And then it sounds like you played this game where you were like, let me see if
Oh
I can put in
yeah.
even more. And each month was like a
And those,
game to see how much you
since I
could put
had
in.
like almost every month much more than 10 grand, it also allowed myself to give myself grace the months that I just didn't make a lot of money. I don't want to portray myself as like the top highest earner that did not experience nights where I made $0, where I danced for nothing. The months that I invested less than $10,000, I had to realize like it's okay. You know, you're only human. This is your minimum, but look at everything you've built. And that's why making a minimum and having months that you can invest more than that allows you to be gentle and kind to yourself when you don't have months you make a lot of money, especially in our industry.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to really let the audience know, like, if you want help with this stuff, Spicy, like, this is
Yeah.
like, she loves to help people in this industry start saving, start budgeting, start investing. So if you need somebody who understands the world that you come from and has like someone who's literally, become a millionaire at 30,
It is.
like, which is wild, like, she can show you how to do it. So hit her up on Instagram or Threads at the Spicy Investor. Like,
Yeah.
her DMs are open to anyone in that industry. She's been very open about that. She's very passionate about empowering people in that industry. So, and she's shared a lot of resources here. People she follows and has been educated by. So I would
Thank
just
you.
really love what you're doing, and I'm just curious. You've kind of mapped it out, but before we kind of go on to the next thing, are there specific financial issues, those in this, like, the dancer, sex worker space, like, other than just like seeing everyone, like, all this money? Because, like, before we hit record, you literally said to me, we touch so much money. And I'm just curious, like, are there any like specific issues that like people in your industry like face that like causes them to stay
I
financially
really,
trapped?
just through my eyes, the biggest one I've seen is just the lifestyle creep. You know, I also see a lot of women that have guilt of how much money they make and not sending money to family in need or friends in need. You know, as a high earner, you sometimes you sit with a little bit of guilt, like I'm making all this money, why am I going to hoard it or put it away? I should send money back home, or I should, help so and so out. So I see that a lot. But the main thing truly is the lifestyle creep. Just like the mindset of like, oh, I can go into work tomorrow, make $1,000. Like, it's okay if I have $1,000 car note, or if this is where I decide to rent. But that would be the biggest financial issue in my industry, is just seeing the types of lifestyles a lot of these women create for themselves, and they can maintain it with the money they make, but they are trapped to making sure they make a certain amount monthly so they can maintain that lifestyle or that image.
Yeah. If you could go back to your younger investing self, any specific advice you'd give her around like
Yeah.
investing and money? Like, if the one that hadn't lost the ninety
Oh,
thousand
that one.
dollars day trading, like, what would you tell?
I would
Yeah, what
tell
would you
her
tell
that
her?
the market has a way of humbling us and really like shaking out who's a true investor and doing things properly and who's just gambling. And I wish I could just tell her that you don't have to be making money like the quick get rich way. Like, you can make a sustainable amount of money, slow and steady, and not have any fear or anxiety of how to day trade the next like big stock or the next big meme stock. So I would tell her to slow down. You don't have to make all this money at once. You can make money if you focus on a proper plan and just look at the long term growth. Mm-hmm.
I love it. All right, so we're going to start to land this plane, and I'm going to ask
Uh,
you what I ask just about every guest, but I want you to share a tip, tool, or strategy for fitness slash health, money slash wealth, and life slash happiness. So for
for
fitness, what do
fitness
you
and
got for
health,
us?
I'm a big workout person. I'm a big gym rat. And I think my big thing is scheduling your workouts as if they were doctor's appointments, like treating workouts as a non negotiable calendar event. It's not really like an I don't have time moment. Like I need to make this appointment just for my mental health and for my body.
I love that. What
The
do you got
biggest
for
thing is pay
money and
yourself
wealth?
first. That's my like big takeaway with money and wealth. Paying yourself first, like setting up these automatic investments as if it's the most important monthly bill you have.
That's great. How about
I think a
life
big one
slash
is for me
happiness?
is practicing daily gratitude no matter where you're at in your journey, even if it's not finances. So, like writing down 3 things you're grateful for each day, no matter how big or small, it kind of trains your brain to focus on the moments that matter and be more in tune with gratitude and humbling yourself with what you do have around you and not what you want.
I love that. Yeah, gratitude. Yeah, I one of the things I'm, you know, I as a coach, I'm always trying to empower people to live in the gain, not the gap. And the gap is
Yeah.
between where you are and your goal, and the gain is how far you've
Yeah.
come from like starting point zero to like the goal is whatever $1 million. You may not have $1 million, but you got $200,000 and you started at zero, so like holy heck, you're like
Yeah.
infinitely richer than you used to be. So like, and when you celebrate like the gain, you celebrate whether it's a micro win or a milestone, like you're just so much happier, and you're like, and that gives you energy to keep going. So I absolutely love, like, I'm a big fan of having gratitude and practicing it and reflecting on it, because one, you're a much better person to be around. Two, you're much happier because you actually pay attention to what you have versus what you don't have.
Absolutely.
um and yeah. So, Spicy, any last words or thoughts, or call to action to the audience members, um, that you want to share
Yeah,
before we
absolutely. I think
shut this down?
if you can take anything away from this, it's really, I know how many people you see on social media living these like lavish lifestyles or sharing these like big screenshots of with all their money, whether it's true or not, you never know. The best thing you can do is focus on yourself and look at the people that you see on social media as inspiration if that's what you want to do, instead of beating yourself down or even, forming jealousy in your heart. I follow so many multimillionaires and I don't feel jealousy. They inspire me because I can do that too. And there's a method to everyone's madness. But when it comes to long-term investors, we all use the same basic equation, and that's just index funds and chill.
Yeah. Yeah. High savings rate gets
Absolutely.
you there even faster. Well, Spicy, thank you so much for
Thank
coming on
you.
the show, for sharing your journey, for being open about the industry that you spent years in, for your mission to empower the people in that industry. And I just, the audience, just so to repeat, it's at The Spicy Investor
And Instagram.
on Threads
Yes.
and Instagram. She has educational content. She has entertaining content. She's a great creator. I highly recommend you follow her, whether you're
Yes.
in the industry or not. She's just an
Thank you.
awesome person to follow. So thank you so much for coming on the show and doing what you do
Thank you
for
for
the
having
people
me.
in your industry.